All right, good afternoon, guys. Today we're going to start another series about what we started last week. Last week, if you remember, we went through some common workplace hazards, that a lot of people actually overlook, right? However, for today, what we're going to really go into, because I received a lot of questions, several questions from my audience that they want to know about some of the answers that I did explain. So I have kind of created, several series, based on all of these answers. However, if you see, still on the board, because I still have, some listed on the board, right? We talked about the different categories of hazard, last week in one of my series last week. And then we kind of went through all the different type of hazard, that we have, which is physical hazard, chemical hazard, biological hazard, economic hazard, excuse me, psychosocial hazard, and environmental hazard. So now, what really affects a lot of people, that's what I'm going to be talking about, right? So I'm going to have different settings on all these categories, right? To kind of break it down, to my audience to see, some of the areas that they will be exposed to, right? So with that being said, so this week and then the subsequent week, what we're going to be doing is actually going into the physical hazard, right? Because that's what you see. Everybody sees around them, but they don't know if how they're exposed to this hazard, right? So but today we're going to be breaking it down, for a lot of people, to see, for my audience in TikTok and also on YouTube, because we're live in both social media. So today, like I said, we're going to be going into the physical hazard, right? And then I'm going to pick, one of the different type of physical hazard, and we'll kind of talk about it. However, if you have a question, like I said, you can always reach out to me through chat, through comments, and then I can able to bring down the your question and your concern to you, right? And it's very important, for this community, right? The community I'm trying to create is to make sure we bring this awareness to a lot of people, right? Because a lot of people are now aware of some of these common hazards, that we are exposed to on a daily basis, right? But they are around us. They are around us. They are our job on the road, and then this affect us on a daily, right? And people are not aware of that. So that's what I'm trying to bring to my community, to be aware of this stuff. And then while you are aware of it, also, how can you control for that exposure, from these hazards, right? Like I said, we're going through talking about physical hazard today. So, like I always do, I'm going to put them down on the board, for a lot of people to see. And then if I have some time today, I'm probably going to some, small calculation that we actually do as a professional to help people in the field, right? At home or wherever where there's noise, right? So we have, several techniques that we use to kind of help everybody. Welcome, Adams Gabe. Thanks for joining. So I'm a board certified industrial engineer, also an engineer. So I can call myself a noise engineer, a ventilation engineer, occupational health, expert, occupational hygiene, expert. You know, I'm a mechanical engineer, as well. So Just trying to just see how we can help, this TikTok, kind of bring a lot of insight, to a lot of people. Guy, thanks for joining. So today what we're going to be talking about is physical hazard. Physical hazard. And then what are physical hazard? Like I said last week, uh, physical hazard is some of the hazard that we will see. For example, like noise, happens to be one of them. Two is vibration. Three is lighting. Number four is temperature. Either cold or hot temperature. And then before I start going on today's series, which happens to be the physical hazard, I'm going to break it down, into sections. However, we're only talking about noise hazard, for this series, right? And there's going to be, I cannot put it in the past, because a lot of people are kind of reach out that the video is too long. So I kind of break it, out to have different parts, right? So it will be easy, for people, that are trying to just look through the video and they're not just bored, just looking for an hour long of training. So today I'm going to make it, like 6 parts. Every 10 minutes, we're going to have a break and then we'll go to the second part. However, the first part that we're going to really be talking about at the moment is what is noise hazard? What is noise hazard? All right. Noise, we have noise everywhere, right? If you're listening to music, if you're driving on the road, if you're using any machinery at home, those are noise. They emit every one of those stuff that I mentioned generate noise, right? And then how does this noise impact you, right? Noise becomes an hazard when it's loud enough to damage the hearing, right? Or interfere with communication, right? So if you are in a place and then you have to talk too loud for the person that you're trying to talk to hear, that means perhaps that place is very loud, right? So that's what we have to watch out for, right? So when you have to talk too loud within an environment for somebody that is close to you for them to hear, that means it is too loud, right? So it is not just about loud noise, right? I'm not here to talk about only loud noise, right? We use a lot of earphones. I mean, these days, in this generation, it's just everybody is just used to having this new technology of having an earphone, right? They have earphones to listen to music, to communicate, to do meetings at a job, at home, remote worker, they use that all the time. However, how safe are those, right? And also, we are AirPods, we are headphones to listen to music and also do meetings. And even background noise at home can be risky, right? Thanks for joining. Hola. And if I'm not, I hope I'm not, I don't want to mess this up. Gene Tag, thanks for joining. You know, So this noise, can also impact, you know, your your hearing health as well. But a lot of people doesn't know that. People are used to, playing loud music, even while they are home, right? That can within time, that can cause hearing loss, right? And then you might be in the car and they just like to just play loud music. They just like to play loud music. That can, be detrimental, to your hearing health in the long run, right? And I always tell people, in all my classes, right? Dose is what make the poison, right? How much of that are you exposed to, right? How much of the dose are you exposed to? Because the noise is a dose, right? Whatever you are exposed to right now, maybe for a longer period of time, let's say you walk for 8 hours or you drive, roll your window down for a longer period of time, the dose that you are exposed to at one time is the dose, right? So the dose is the poison. It's the amount of dose you are exposed to that causes, hazard for a lot of people, right? So, with that being said, you know, am I saying that, oh, you don't need to play music or you don't need to use AirPod or headphone? No, that's not what I'm saying, right? Everything in life, we're taking risks, to do whatever thing that we're doing in life, but we can able to control some of the exposure that we have, right? And then which is the noise from the airport, on the headphone, they are not exempt, right? Playing loud music at home. A lot of people have homes that they have to mow their lawn, cut their grasses outside, and they have to use those lawnmowers, right? Those can cause some health effect to your hearing as well, right? So that's what we're trying to just, I'm trying to just let you guys know at this moment. Right. So with that being said, I'm going to just take a 1 minute break, to finish this one part. This is the first part, this is part one, because we're already over 10 minutes, about 12 minutes away already. And then this is part one. And then I'll just take, some few seconds and then we'll probably come back, for the second part. All right. So the next part that we're going to be going with, this is part two of this series of noise hazard. And what we're talking about today is noise of physical hazard. I mentioned all the different types of physical hazard that we have. We have noise, vibration, lighting, and extreme temperature, either cold or hot, right? Those are extreme temperature, right? And then today, and maybe throughout the series, we're only going to be talking about noise for this series, right? Because noise is a big, issue that we have, around us. And then also a lot of people are affected, by this, without even knowing, right? A lot of people, and then what I've done some research when I was in college, with all this new technology that a lot of people are used to right now, I'll find out that it looks like, the new generation, they're going to lose a lot of this age group is going to lose their hearing, because of a lot of all this technology that we're using. They comes with their hazard, but the manufacturer, the vendor, they're not going to tell you all this. So that's why we come in as an occupational hygiene or industrial hygiene professionals to bring this issue to you and see how we can, you can able to help yourself. And this is not just to scare anybody. It's just how can you protect yourself, right? Because Like today, I taught some group of engineers at my job, and then I told them why I'm passionate about my job is because I want people not to be able to go home safe, right? Even after they work for 30 years, I want them to be able to enjoy their retirement without developing any advanced health effects. So has everybody. So this does not relate to just people that work in the factory, in the manufacturer, in the chemical plant. No, also involved with people that work at home as well, right? And people don't know it, right? So the part two is we're going to talk about some real world example, that so you guys can able to see, how what among this example does relate to you. Oh, thanks for joining, Black. Joyce, thanks for joining. Boy, Charles, thanks for joining as well. Right. So we have some real world example, right? And then you might know somebody, that's probably working in this industry, or your partner is doing this at home as well, right? Because you can be at home and be exposed to noise as well, right? So for those that work in the factory or in the manufacturer, settings, you are exposed. You walk around a lot of machinery, right? A lot of vessels, compressor fans, pumps, whatever, right? So those uh, instruments, those equipment does emit, noise, right? They emit noise. That's why in the manufacturing industry, it is required that employee must wear earplugs, right? But we'll get to that. When I get to that, we can able to talk about the controls, right? A lot of people use grinder. You work at home, and then you like to do a lot of crafting, and then you have all these machines, these tools, to do work at home. Like grinders. You have grinder. You have a table saw. You have a circular saw. You have rider. So all this stuff does generate noise. I have some of this instrument I'm the garage as well because I like to kind of get my hand dirty sometimes, right? So I have this instrument and I know for sure that they're loud, right? So, but being an expert, I always try to protect myself. I'm not at work, I'm at home, right? So I have to protect myself because, I talk about this stuff, at a job. I cannot coach a lot of people, but here I am at home. I'm not following what I'm preaching about, right? So that's why. So it doesn't matter where you are, maybe at your job, maybe at home, maybe you're driving on the road. These noise are there. You can take them away. If you're working in office setting, that is not factory level settings, right? You are printers, right? You are HVAC system. That maybe your office is close to an HVAC system that is just emitting a lot of noise, right? Uh, Sila, thanks for joining. So this type of stuff, we have to be aware of that, right? So, like in my job, if I have to work in that type of environment, or I'm called upon to come do some consulting in that type of environment, what I do is I have to recommend the employer to install a noise absorber, within the wall that people are working, right? So that they are not exposed to that external noise that is generating and disturbing a lot of people within that space, right? So there's several things that it just depends on where we are at that point that can make us to kind of look what is the control that best fits this type of people. And then remember, you have to mindful that it is not one solution fits all, right? It is not, right? Because you might go to another place with the same type of equipment, and then you have different solutions for it, right? So there's no one size fit all. When we're talking about trying to control some of this as the job, right? Also, people that work remotely, right? We have a lot of people work remotely, especially during the pandemic, right? People work from home and they have to use headphones, right? They have to be in the meetings. Some have to be customer service because we still have a lot of customer service, right now that still work from home, right? So they don't have to be in the office. Since they don't have to be in the office because of the noisy environment, maybe probably within, their household, they have to use headphones, right? And I know these sometimes can create, hearing loss because if you have to have the headphone for a longer period of time during your work shift, that's just exposure right there. So the continuous exposure is what becomes the poison at that point. The continual exposure is what causes the hazard, right? It's not just because at one time when you just use this noise, the headphone, then you're going to be exposed. You are exposed at that point, but the dose, what is the duration, right? What's the frequency? So that's what we look at, right? So with that being said, I'm going to go to the third part of this because like I said, I hear a lot of concern, from my audience that say that the video is too long. So that's why I'm trying to do it section by part. So we have like from six parts, to this series, right? So I'm done with part two of this, and I'm going to come back for part three. All right, welcome back, for part three, of this noise hazard and how we can control it, right? So we start at, noise, at the real time example. And then I also have animated clip, that I have on my profile is a short video for 30 seconds. You guys can look at it, like it, and share it. All this gives you the detail how the airport does affect, the hearing, right? How the airport does affect the hearing. When you use it for a long period of time, how it does affect it. So you can look at that, and then I can probably just go into it, to show my audience to see, how the video does actually work. It's just for 30 seconds, it's not that long. Music through your earbuds. Sounds cause the tiny hair cells in your inner ear to vibrate excessively. Over time, this intense vibration can lead to the breakdown and death of these hair cells. Once damaged, these cells cannot regenerate, leading to permanent hearing loss. Additionally, prolonged exposure to loud noise can cause tinnitus, a constant ringing in the ears. So you can see. So the main point, out of this video is the prolonged use of that. It's not like if you use the airport, you're going to have hearing loss. No, you have to have a prolonged use of that. So I have some tips I have to give you guys at the end of this series, right? So we're part three of this series, and then how to protect ourselves, right? How do we protect ourselves, if we will find ourselves in this environment, right? So here is how to be safe, right? Number one, you have to use a noise canceling headphone, right? I have on here, let me just have a close look for you guys to see. Right? These are the tips, right? Use a noise canceling headphone, right? So if you have to continue to use the headphone or AirPod, make sure you choose the type that has the feature of noise cancellation, right? And then if you're the type that work in the customer service field, and then you have to be on call all the time because of customer inquiring of stuff, then you have to just take breaks, from the airphone. Take listening break. Give your ear a rest every hour, right? Give yourself every hour so that you don't continuously expose yourself, right? Have a break of shame, from that continuous use of that headphone or AirPod, right? And then if you have to work in a noisy environment, maybe at home, you have to cut your grasses, or maybe you have to do some DIY in your garage, and you have all these instruments, right? You have the tip saw, the minor saw, you have all these seven instruments, for you to do, all those crafts you're trying to do, right? Make sure you wear air protection, right? And there's two types of air protection. We have the air plugs and we also have the air moves, right? So you can use either or, right? But make sure when you're trying to purchase any of these two, air plugs or the air protection, make sure it has the highest NRR, right? Which is noise reduction rating, right? NRR is noise reduction rating. You will see on the back of that air plug, it will tell you noise NRR. And NRR is just tells you that the amount of protection that you are getting, from those air plugs. Rennick, thank you for joining. We were talking about physical hazard, and this series is about noise hazard, and how do we control it. So at this point, I'm just giving, you guys the tip, on how to protect yourself. So we look at the first one is to use a noise cancellation headphone if you have to, use your headphone, right? And then take breaks, frequent break every hour. If you have to be on the job that, have to be on the headphone continuously for a long period of time, right? Take breaks every hour. Give your head some breaks every hour. And then if you have to be in a noisy environment, like using any noisy equipment at home, lawnmower, table saw, and what have you at home, then you have to wear earplugs, right? We have two types of air protection: the earplugs and the air mount, right? And then the last one is what a lot of people does not know. You can download, some app, maybe through your Android or through iPhone. The app, you can able to use that app to measure the level of decibel, right, of the noise, right, that you have been exposed to. So that's going to help you, to able to know the amount of noise that you've been exposed to, right? You can download it over on your phone. I have, the type of that I use on my job. There's NIOS, there's ACGIH. If you go on the app, you will see, right? It's an app to measure the decibel, the noise level within an environment. And then now we're done with these, with how to protect yourself. However, if you have to download, this app, right, to measure this noise, right? If you have to download this app to measure the noise, what do you understand with the reading? Because you have to have some reading to be able to know if you're exposed or not, right? So, with that being said, we have several regulations that tells us how we measure the exposure limits. How much of noise, how much of that noise we have been exposed to, right? So the first one, which is by this government, is from the federal government, is a federal government agency. It's OSHA, right? OSHA, right? We have NIOSH and we have ACGIH, AC. And then each of these uh, of this standard does have their own limit, right? So for OSHA is 90 decibel, 90 decibel for 8 hours. And NIOS is 85 decibel for 8 hours. And the ACGIH is 85 decibel for 8 hours. Right? For 8 hours. So when you have to download the app, to kind of do your measurement, to take the level of noise at home, then this is what you're going to be comparing with, right? If the level that you measure is over 85, but below 90, that means you are over when you're using this tool. However, you are below ocean level, right? And then if you want to start from 90, you're over 90, that means you're over all three, right? So with that being said, uh, you have to be mindful of the type of noise that is around you, right? You have to be very mindful of that, right? So because once you lose that hearing, and you cannot get it back. Just like the animated clip that I show you guys. Once the inside the air drum, there's air cells, right? There's air cells. So once the air cells die because of continual exposure of noise, when they die, you can grow them back. That's the beginning of your hearing loss. And then because you cannot grow them back, that means your hearing loss is irreversible, right? But I have another study that I'm going to do so to tell you the type of hearing loss, right? And then how you can prevent against those, right? With this, I'm going to stop on the part three of this, because we'll spend about 30 minutes already. And then we're going to go to part four because I don't want to overload you guys with a long information and then you get bored just looking up stuff. So we'll come back for part four of this. All right, welcome back, guys. And we're going to go to the part four of this series. And the part four is going to be some of the rhetoric, that people spread, right? When it comes to exposure, right? So we're going to be talking about that. All right. There's a lot of stuff that go around that if it doesn't hurt, it's not dangerous, right? If it doesn't hurt you, it's not dangerous. And I can tell you, when you're exposed to noise, you will feel, you know, the impact, right there. Within 24 hours, some people will have ringing in their ear, right? And then within 24 to 48 hours, that should go away. That should go away. However, in the event that the ringing of the air does not go away, then there is concern right there. There's concern that you have to watch out for. Patrick, thanks for joining. That you have to watch out for, right? So if right, so this is just a myth, right? The truth is, hearing damage is often gradual, right? Just like what I said, and then it's irreversible. It's irreversible, right? Hearing the truth is, hearing damage is often gradual. It's a process, right? It's a process. Just like what I said earlier, the dose make the poison, right? It is just like you go to the doctor, you get checked because you have an headache, and then doctor recommend you to use two Tylenol, right? However, because you having so much pain, you decided to take between 4 to 6, right? Remember, the Tylenol is safe for you to use if you use the two the two that was recommended for you, right? If you use those two, it is safe, right? That does not mean it's safe because if you continue to use, the Tylenol every day for a longer period of time, you're going to affect your liver, right? But it is deemed safe, right? It's deemed safe. That's why they recommend it for you. However, now because you double the dose to be used at one time, what had happened was what was supposed to be safe is now causing an adverse effect for you because you overdose yourself. So once you overdose yourself, now it's the amount that you take that now become poison, right? If you took the two, it would have been safe for you, right? But now because you take 4 or 6, now you overdose yourself, now it becomes poison. So that's why in toxicology, we say dose makes the poison. It's the dose that make the poison, right? It's the dose that make the poison, right? So that's the truth. And then once you are exposed to one dose, and then for a continuous longer period of time, let's just say you like to just do this for a long time, or you're a DJ, you go out and you expose yourself with this noise, or you drive and then you have your window down all the time, right? So once you're driving, the sound wave that is being emitted into your eardrum is causing gradual damage to your hearing, to your eardrum, right? Gradually. So the gradual process of the gradual damage that it causes to you will not become cumulative in the long run that you cannot, it's irreversible, right? Because you have exposed yourself continuously without having a break of chain of exposure, That's what causes the damage. Right. So if you remember the tip that I gave earlier about if you're the type that have to use the headphone or AirPod all the time because your job requires it, right? You have to give your ears a rest every hour. So every hour you have to give yourself a break from that airport or from that headphone. If not, if you use it today for a longer period of time, tomorrow you continue the same pace for a longer period, you begin to have that, ringing in your head, right? And then the longer period of time is going to gradually damage the air cell inside the hearing, right? And once that's damaged, you cannot replace it anymore. That's why it's irreversible, right? It's irreversible. Once you lose that hearing, you lost it forever. You can't get it anymore. Thanks for joining, Gino. If I don't want to mess up that name, but thanks for joining. I appreciate it. Right. So we have to be, do away with all these myths of how a lot of people think if anything doesn't hurt, that means you are not exposed. It doesn't cause any damage, right? I can bet you there are a lot of chemicals. When I get to the series of chemical hazard, there's a lot of chemical that we use at home or cleaning agent at home that have some chemical composition in there that's going to damage some of your target organs, like your lungs, your liver, your kidney, and what have you, right? So all this stuff, they are there, but if you are not following the right, protocol on how to use them, you just expose yourself, to some of these hazards, right? So we have to be very, very careful about that, right? And then I have some tips, uh, for remote workers, like I said, people that work remotely, because we're on TikTok and we're also on YouTube. So that's why I'm kind of just looking here and looking that way as well, right? Some tips, for a remote worker. Remote worker, don't ignore this, right? If you know anyone that's working remotely and then they have to use the headphone or AirPod, right? Please get this information to them, and then you can also share this live, to them as well, since they can join, so they can able to go back and look at it, right? So, for remote workers, you have to avoid blasting music while working, right? So I have a calculation that I'm going to tell people, why that is very serious, right? Use soft background, right? Noise instead of loud playlist, right? Check your audio settings and volume limits, right? So let's just go into this, right? Let me quickly give you this for remote workers to know, right? I said avoid blasting music while walking. All right, there's the reason why. So now you are exposed to the loud music, and then you are also exposed by the means of the earphone that you have. So that means the noise that is coming to you right now is twice now. The one from your headphone and one from the music, right? So, and then, like I said earlier, to get an instrument, to measure the level of noise. So let's just assume that if you remember the limit that I told you about was 90 and 85. So let's just assume you are exposed to the same amount of noise, right? Let's say 85, 85, right? And then for you to know if you are exposed, you have to take the average. However, if I ask you to take the average of those two noise sources, you probably tell me it's 85, right? However, that is wrong, right? And when we're doing noise calculations, we don't use the arithmetic mean, right? So I will tell you, this is what you have to do. We have a different formula that we use to measure to see what will be the cumulative dose that that person is exposed to. And this is the formula, right? So the formula is LPT, which is the level of noise we're trying to measure, is equal to 10 log of summation integer is equal to 1 and n is 10 LP integer over 10, right? So we have the logarithm, the 10 log of summation. So this, E is summation, right? And then we have two noise. So the two noise, one from music is 85. So decibel is the unit of noise. And the other one is from the headphone. So it's also 85 decibel. Right, so now we have 285. So the arithmetic mean is not 85. And I will show you. So the formula said MPT is equal to 10 log of summation of n is equal to 2 because we have two different types of noise. One from the music and the other one from the headphone, right? So we have two. So n is 2 into 1 because we're going to start from 1 moving forward. So that means 10 LP is the level of noise that we measure, which is 85. The first one is 85 divided by 10 plus 1085 divided by 10. One is for the music and the other one is from the headphone, right? So now 10 log of this equals to, if you divide 85 divided by 10, so that would be 8.5 plus 10 raised to power 8.5, right? So now, if I use my calculator, so that would be 10 log of 10 raised to power 8.5 plus another 10 raised to power of 8.5. That gives me 88, right? 88 decibel. So because that person is exposed to two different noise, right? And people will think, oh yeah, it's 85. Yeah, because the measurement is just 85, then it's 85. It's not, because you're exposed to two different type of noise at the same time. So the cumulative effect is multiplied, right? Because the pressure that you've been exposed to at that time is twice, it's twice at that point. So that's why instead of 85, what you are exposed to is 88 at that time, which is way higher than 85. So that's why you have to be mindful. You have to be really mindful of your surrounding type of noise you're exposed to, especially some groups that also have to drive, roll their window down, and they're playing loud music, right? They're playing loud music, and then they have their window down. You just exposed to two different type of noise at that time. So the impact is going to be greater than if you are exposed to one of them, right? So that's what we're talking about right here, right? And that's why, and this for remote worker, which they don't think that they're exposed to it, right? They work at home, they're supposed to be quiet. But however, they're still exposed to this type of noise, even at home, right? So you just have to be very, very careful, right? And people that work in the garage, they do the DIY, they have the generator going, and then they're using the miter saw, or they're using the table saw, they're using a router. Those multiply, but right now it's twice at that point, right? You're exposed to one from the generator and the other from the instrument that you're using, right? So with that being said, I think we've done part 5 and part 6 to wrap this up, because we're almost close to the 5:30 mark, because this is just an hour live. So you can drop your question, like I said, for my friends that is online, you can drop your comment. And if you know somebody, that might be exposed to this type of hazard, just share, this live, to them so they can look at it. They might have questions, so they can send it to me as a comment or, through message. I'm going to reply to them, right? And then, like I said before, the intent of these live is to help, is to help bring knowledge sharing, to this community so we can able to see, how to help each other out. uh, Thanks for joining, Marilyn. Thank you so much for joining. We're wrapping up out because we almost, 1 hour into the live, right? If you don't mind, please, you can give me a daily help me, like this video, share it to your friends and family, and let them watch it and get the insight. And if you have any question, please reach out to me. I'm willing to help at any time. Right. So to wrap this up, like I said, if you have any question, please follow, like, and share. Follow, like, and share. And then tomorrow we're going to go to the next step of the physical hazard, because I kind of give you guys, the different type of physical hazard, which is the noise, the vibration, the lighting that you use at home. You think that it's safe to have all this lighting everywhere. The lighting can be, hazardous to your health too, right? And we have temperature, right? Because you can be in a too cold of a weather or too hot of a weather, right? And then when I get to the section, to this episode of the temperature, we're going to talk about, the off season, the summertime that we are, and how much of exposure a lot of people does have, right? When it comes to temperature. However, I'm taking in stages, right? Today we just, talk about noise hazard and the control. And tomorrow we're going to dive into vibration, which is the next, type of physical hazard. And then please be safe, be safe, protect your hearing, and then share this live with someone who wear earplugs, right? Wear AirPods, that uses headphone, people that you know that is doing remote work. Please share this live to them, so that this can, they can able to get some insight from it too. Thanks for joining, Viola. I don't want to mispronounce your name. We're just talking about noise control and its hazard, right? So please share this live, and then we're going to be back the same time tomorrow, 4:30 Central Time tomorrow, to talk about the next type of physical hazard with its vibration. So be ready, please share this and invite more people into my life, so we can able to build this community, right? So thank you so much for joining. See you same time tomorrow. Bye bye.